Fantastic. Well, I got a little bit of an upgrade. Hopped on eBay and bought a second Google 5 Pixel phone for about $100, and that will be my camera for being out here in the barn, which is great, so that my personal phone doesn't get bogged down or the notifications don't cause the camera to stop recording or whatever. The microphone I'm using now also should cut out some of the road noise and hopefully some of the wind noise. And I set up a desk or a table in the workshop here because the next few projects that I'll be working on are mostly just making the cleats that go on the wall for the various tools. Thank you so much for stopping in. My name is John Decker. This is the Barn to Workshop project series, I guess. And we'll be doing some stuff today here in the barn. One of those examples for here is the kind of the punch nailer. I don't know if you can see that in the camera here. When I bought this, it came as part of a kit, I think. There were a handful of things in that kit that I purchased before we even moved into this house. I bought it. I was very excited about getting a house, and I bought a whole big box of Ryobi tools, and they've been pretty good. I've been using them for 5 years and have had some that I've needed to maintain and some that have just been really hard working workhorses. A guy told me several years ago that you buy the tools you can afford to lose, and that's why I have so many Ryobi pieces. I'm going to be working today on maybe one or two of these mounts and trying to get a few of these out so that the videos don't get bogged down with each individual thing. The buffer is something that I have very rarely used. I'm trying to remember why I purchased it because it was a separate purchase, but it's been sitting in a cabinet for probably 2 years unused. It came with these two wraps that go around it for different levels of buffing. It does appear as though I have used this and potentially washed it at least once, and it's got some wear and tear on it, but I could not tell you when I bought this or why exactly. So either way, it needs to be in a position to be seen so that I remember I have it if I need it. And if you're asking, well, why don't you just sell it? I don't think I could sell it for anything worthwhile right now, so I might as well keep it in case I need it, or if somebody says, hey, you know, it'd be nice if we had a buffer, and I can just be like, well, it's funny, you should say that. I happen to have an old 18-volt buffer. I will say this, the buffer is effectively just a rotary tool. It essentially just spins around in a circle, and it makes me wonder if it could be used as a really large sander if you had a kit to attach Velcro sanding, you know, like the roofing or the drywall sanding sheets that are about 9 or 10-inch discs. Might work for that. I don't know. But either way, we're going to get this one into its own mount. Now, that means that I can't mount it like this vertically because it's so wide. So I'm going to need to mount it like this horizontally, but I'm kind of inclined to make it so that the fabric part is against the wall so it's less likely to catch dirt. And if I wanted to put like a piece of plastic, like a plastic bag or something over it to keep it from getting dusty, I could still set it into a slot. Let's see if I got a piece of cardboard or something I can use. You know what? Let's use one of these. Okay. So I got this shopping bag. It was sitting right behind me. I'm going to set that down for just a second. And I'm going to draw out the design that I was thinking about. Let me grab the pencil. Well, that figures. Had the pencil there on my hat. Okay. So we know that this unit has kind of the, I'm going to draw it from the side, like in profile, has the blob, and then it has the tapered cone that goes to a slight, you know, indent rather. And then it kind of goes back out to the handle. And that's a handle. And then it's got the thing that sticks off the front of the handle, which is technically the top. And that's the battery spot. And then eventually you stick a battery in there. So that's, you know, make this fluffy if you want to see that it's fluffy. But this is essentially the question now. If this is the wall here, then I need and a bracket is somewhere like, say, right here. And I need to make a piece that fits into that bracket. That's a slot. I've got those pieces already cut, ready to go. And then I think I'm going to take a piece of flat plywood or OSB rather, and run it as a straight component, like a straight shot all the way down to go past the bottom just a little bit of where the fuzz is here. And then take a chunk of wood, tie to that, the bottom here, because this isn't terribly heavy, so the rigidity doesn't need to be super intense. And take that piece of wood over, could be a little bit thinner than that, but take it over to just about where the handle back is, right about there. And then from that piece of wood up, go up just far enough that we're covering the about 3/4 of this section here in the middle where the two components meet. We're looking at a panel that is essentially like this, with a brace at the bottom and a, I don't know what to call it, not a brace, but like a cradle. We'll call it a cradle there at the top. Doesn't need to have a whole bunch of support laterally, as long as the foam here can set into something that isn't perfectly flat. So we probably want to go with, here, I'll see what it would look like from if you're facing it. So it would be flat board as the backer, right? And then the clip is behind the board here, so we'll just kind of mark that it's there. And then at the bottom of this board, where we would have our bracket here, we'd have one on either side, just about like this. That way the fuzz here can kind of cradle into that at the bottom. And then the front, where we talked about the actual cradle being there, or the yoke, or whatever you want to think of it as, would go across these two boards, like flat, and be sort of shaped like this. Okay. So if that works, the general, keep it as simple as possible, as my professor used to say all the time, keep it simple, stupid. There might be need for like some brace in there, but the components would be made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boards. I can make this front yoke out of OSB and the back out of OSB. The clip that goes to the wall is already cut. That's 3/4 inch pine ply. And then the boards on the side can be scrap pieces, as well as the 45. So that, I think, is the plan to create a clip for this. So let's pull some pieces together. Found a few pieces I think we can use for this. First one up is the backer board. Did a little trim off the bottom here, but this is effectively the size that we need. And the foam part here should stick up above just a little bit. I think it'd be kind of neat looking that way. But most of the weight will be at the back side here anyhow. And I got a piece of 2x4, which is cut at 4.5 inches long. Both of these sections here came off the other side. They're also 4.5 inches long and then split in half. And this one will fit. I'm hoping this shows up. Let me check the camera real quick. Yeah, sure. So let's move some stuff out of the way just a little bit here to make some room for this project. And I'll show you what we're getting into here. Okay, so as per our design, instead of just having a piece at either side and then the U-form kind of falls into that in the middle, decided for a little bit of extra structural stability, go ahead and use this 2x4 head anyways. Use the big block piece down at the bottom, and that will represent where the foam base hits. That's its essential like bottom section. And then these two extra pieces are at the sides. And then the piece that I need to figure out is this. So this will be where the yoke is that fits up underneath and cradles the piece here in the middle. So what I needed to do was to set this in place, essentially, and kind of make sure it's all lined up properly, and rough estimate the space that it needs. Now, granted, this is nice. It's really flush here where the green meets the black, and I can see right based on that roughly where the cut would need to like minimum be for it to slot in to the yoke. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark on the board right about where that should be, and then I'll do some measurements to see if there's a way to make this look a little bit cleaner and give some tolerance for moving it in and out. So let's do that real quick. And then also notable that you can measure with the board at the base set up the way that it is. I took my ruler here, measured straight in off the bottom all the way up until it hit that plastic housing. And it's right about at 4.75 inches deep. So that would be like the minimum tolerance there so that this wouldn't rock backwards. The 4.75 inches is roughly what we're going to be shooting for on the depth of this cut. Measuring left to right, it's about coming in about 3.25. We're just going to call it 3. So there's a tolerance there on the left side. Let's go to the right side, see what the options are. Again, it's about 3.25. So we're going to go at 3. So there's a tolerance there on the right side. The left and right are set. And then up from the bottom here, I'm going to find the middle of this section. This is a 10-inch board roughly. So we're going to go with 5 inches is the middle. I'll do that again, a little ways up. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I'm going to square cut at the bottom here. So let's just do this. And we can go right up to 4.75, which on this is here. Just going to make sure this is offset enough to allow the drawing to line up with where it needs to be. All right, so that's the middle. Going up to the middle here. Just making a little bump there. It's hard to see on OSB because of the print, but it's right here. And now from that position over, I need it to be, I think we can just go with relatively flat, and that should, it's kind of a little bit of there's a little bit of an arc to it. I might sand in a little bit there, but I'm not going to make a big deal about the cut. So we're going to go ahead and run right over here from 3 to our mark. And the same deal on the other side. We're going to go from 3 to our mark. And to note that that space, relatively speaking, can sag in the middle, I guess. Or I guess it could go up at the sides, technically. We'll just make it a little bit changed, but it shouldn't matter. And frankly, I think we'll just leave it square to make it easier to cut. So running the cut along the side here, nice and flat. Another one along the other side, nice and flat. And there's the yoke. So I need to make this cut here. I've got a jigsaw somewhere here, yeah. And we'll just use the jigsaw to cut that off. It's a little bit wide on the tolerance, but that's okay. It's about a 1/2 inch wide on either side. And I think that came just from me saying 3 inch instead of moving into about 3.25 on both sides. And that would have been a 1/4 inch tolerance on either side. But this will be okay because it's not trending towards one side or the other as far as like a big component shift. And so this is how we're going to dry stack it together to see that it works. Not worrying about the back plate. That's something I can work on in a second. So this is the relative position. And you know what? First things first, let's find the middle of this board. Should be at 5 inches roughly. This one's a little bit wider, looks like. So let's go 5 1/8 is the middle on this one. And 5 1/8 at the top, or is it taper? It's a little bit taper. That's why I was off. So 5 1/16 here at the top. This was just a scrap piece. I was already kind of cut. Okay. That's my middle mark. And we can set this one on the middle mark. Okay. And then this thing essentially goes on like that. And in theory, this thing fits in there like that. Not too bad. Let's see if there's going to be any rocking. Just a slight amount of rocking if there's weight, thinking of this as gravity going this way. But I think we'll be good. Okay, so this is a simple enough build. We're going to get this one put together. Apparently the camera did not record the assembly here. We're currently looking at the back, and that's okay. So the back, and then the front, and how it kind of all went together is pretty solid. So right now, the most expensive thing on here is the screws. That was kind of to be expected. All right. The next step is going to be putting the cleats on, and I decided instead of doing one big cleat down the middle, like across the band or across the span there, just because I don't have very many of these cut at this point, we're going to go ahead and put one on either end of this, which will be just as stable and allow for some tolerance to the way the cleat on the wall might be shaped if your wall is not perfectly flat, for example. Make sure it's a little bit off, so this might sit funny, but it's not a big deal in this instance. Seems even there, and it's flush with the side. Prototypes, man. Of course, this is the only one that's going to get made, so I suppose it's not a prototype, it's an artifact. Probably don't need 2 screws here, but I don't know. It seemed like a good idea. Okie dokie. I made a little bit of a mess, but that's part of the course, so no big deal there. And I do a little bit of cleanup on these later on, but this should be good for now. It does have some tolerance, and that's okay, because if you're putting it into this, you're probably coming from a different angle every time. I might in the future, just the way that feels, I might taper these off a little bit, maybe cut them down. But for now, this will keep it nice and strong. Let's see if it fits on the wall, and I'm going to put it in a test spot for now that I'm just sort of hanging everything until I can figure out where they go. And that should be the end of this part of the project, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So the next one on the list for me is the jigsaw. Now I've got a bit of an issue here that I like thinking about the brackets as something that, you know, if this is the wall form, right, and you're coming into it and you could set it on the wall from the perspective of like you're holding on to it and grabbing it off the wall that way. Problem with the jigsaw is there's no good way to do that. You could make a bracket that would hold here, but you'd be offset from however deep your actual blade was, and my blade might change depending on what I'm going to be using. So I think there's 2 options, and this isn't one of them, unfortunately, because that would be kind of nice. I mean, in that instance, you could have the battery on, you could have all sorts of things, you could set them right in place, but I can't guarantee the length of the blade. And so that might cause some issues, and it might start sitting off from the wall. And regardless of everything, I am limited on 2 things. 1, not 100% sure how much lateral space I'll have for all the tools and junk I've got to put on the wall. And 2, I have to keep the front to back of these at less than a foot. And with the blade on and the wood at the back, we'd be over a foot on this. So this has to go on the wall a direction different than this. And that's where I need to come up with something new. Okay. Now it's got a weird shape in the middle, and I've seen some ones online. Hang on just a second. Let me grab a piece. I have seen some online where they use like a round piece, for example, and it sticks in here, and that's how they mount it to the wall. So there's like a round piece there and maybe like a square piece over here, and that's how they mount it. And essentially they're slotting it in as though it were a pegboard hook, except it's more fitted to, it's funny, that fit perfectly, fitted to the actual tool on the wall. That's an option. That is a possibility. My push stick, by the way, for my table saw is made out of an old shovel handle. Anyhow, so that is a possibility. So you have a piece that's kind of at this angle and it matches that tape or that line from the handle itself. And then you have a round piece that goes in under the trigger, and that's how you line it up. So you'd be basically setting it on the wall almost like a display item every single time. That is a possibility, and I may end up going that direction. I'm trying to think if there's any other way to do this that might be simpler, because I also don't want it to be like a plate at the bottom or a shelf at the bottom that might make it possible that it could topple off. Here's the question too. If it has a battery on it, which I'm sometimes leaving the batteries on when I put these things up on the wall, what would be the best thing here? Yeah, I'm thinking that, maybe there. It's not really a good place up here to do that though. Okay, well, I think that answers the question then. It really does have to be a piece of wood bracket that's down along the side here and then has a spindle and a flat that matches this specific position and that position on the saw. I did find this little piece of ash in the wood fire pile. That might be the right size. Let's see here. Yeah, that could work. Let me cut this down and see if it's, you know what? Get the wood tester right here. See if this is dry enough to use for a project. Been outside, so I don't know. 16%. End grains at 13. Could be moisture in the bark. Let me cut it open and see what it looks like on the inside. Turns out this isn't ash at all. This is pear wood. And it's far too moist to be using. What are you? Gosh, I almost wish I had that one on camera. I just tried to cut a stick in half and it just banged me really hard. Didn't get cut, just I'm gonna get a bruise right there. That sucks. Oh, ow. Well, that's not ash or anything, that's oak. Yeah, don't do that. Don't rush. Rushing is bad. Wow, that's heavy duty. I do want to use this piece now. Man, that hurt. Is this oak? This isn't oak. What is this? Apple, maybe? That hurt. Ouch. Yeah. Well, if I could shave that down, or better yet, cut the section right out of the middle here, that would work pretty well. Kind of neat. I'll just trim that off. All right, I'm gonna try one more time to get this cut without killing myself. Let's give it a go, because realistically, that would be kind of cool. We have a piece of wood that's made out of a tree as part of one of these mounts. Okay, so I'm gonna cut it off right about there. Ah, diggity dog, look at that. All right. So bark on or bark off? Let's find out. Well, if I want the bark off on it, it's going to be, how do I get the bark off on this as simply as possible? Tough one. I don't have a spoke shave. I'm not a woodworker. All I've got is a knife, so sorry. I don't have a good way to get the bark off other than to use a knife. All right, well, that was an adventure, and I have barely started. Here's what we're going to do. I need a plate for the back, and I need to make sure it's square on the edge. That one is square. The rest I know are not square. This corner looks square enough for what we're doing. Needs to be able to hold the entire thing all the way down to the back where the metal is here. And I don't really much care about where the blade extends beyond that. And that's, you know, worth noting for length, but here we go. So we're going to go right there as the top. The width is pretty good, but I'm going to go ahead and cut it off at the, about there, I think it is. And then mark it for the bottom, and we'll do some measurements off of that in just a second. But first, marking that this has a little bit of an arch to it. You can see it. So if I mount it just like, I guess here, hang on, that way, and it'll curve up just a little bit and cradle that button right there in the middle. So that'll be neat. We'll put it right there. And then this section here where the handle is, I was thinking I could use a plank like this. This is about the right width. Might round off the edges and whatnot. And as long as the little piece of stick and this are the same length, they act as the bracket holder, whatever you want to call it for this, should be good. I'll be lucky if I can get one screw into this, so I'll drill a big deep hole in it and run a long screw right up into it. Okay, so I've got it cut down to the length. I got the little white piece cut down. I didn't sand it up yet or anything, but not worried about it for right now. I got this piece of really hard wood. This is interesting. I don't know what that is. I thought it was apple, but it doesn't matter. All right, let's go ahead and screw for the drill holes. Pilot. I'm gonna go right down through here. And then we'll flip it over and reveal an offcut from zip. Okay. Now let me go grab the drill bit that I can run into this, because this is going to need the drill bit run all the way through, I think. Otherwise, it can be really hard to hang on to while it's being... I don't want to split it. It's just really hard wood. But this one shouldn't need it. So let me go get 3 screws for this. I'll be right back. Drill bits. Kind of been the collector of all the random drill bits, so I don't even know what drill bits are what in this box anymore. What I usually look for, and I don't know if this is how normal people do this, but I get a drill bit and I line it up with a screw and see if the thread overlaps the outside of the actual drill bit itself. So the drill bit is just taking up the room that the shaft would be in. And that usually keeps it from splitting. At least that's my experience. Again, I am not a woodworker, so if you've got a better tip than that, let me know. That would be handy. Facing up. This isn't for it to be drilled entirely. This is for it to be drilled to the point where it marks where I need to drill in. So just enough. It's not quite centered on that piece there. And let's drill in. Smoke smells like maybe apple. Still don't know. I don't know. Smells good. All right. Let's go through the back here with our drill bit. It's not this drill bit. This one. All right. So, get in right there. That. Nice and tight. And now I have made a zip sheathing shield. or a plastering thing. Whatever. Okay, let's get the other two on here. And I think that's pretty much going to be it, because there isn't really much else I'd need to align if this works. So let's find out if it flops around. It does a little bit. There's a little bit of floppiness there. But maybe we can correct that floppiness with the offcut I had from this and stick it down in here somewhere. That looks so weird. Let's see how it works, though. Oh, that's the wrong tool. Looks like that when done. Hang on a second. So it'll be like that on the wall. That's not terrible. Holding itself up pretty well. And the battery can be on it as well. So as far as weight balance goes, I think it seems to be balanced to the middle when the battery is on. It's probably going to be offset to the front when the battery's off. That's okay. My plan to put in 2 separate brackets on the back, essentially putting one like here and then another one of similar length over here. It's probably going to be the plan again. So, all right, it looks weird. I appreciate the fact that it looks weird, but it lines up. Actually, could probably cut off a little bit at the back, but we'll leave it in case I get a bigger battery on there. All right, taking the battery off. Still lines up. Still sits up there. Shouldn't be too weird with the battery off, but I'm going to make it so the battery being on is a thing because I have a handful of these batteries, and maybe if the battery's on, I'll be more inclined to use it. I am not a big fan of the jigsaw like this, and it's for no reason, no fault to the jigsaw itself. There's a part of me that can't be very precise with it, and it's frustrating. In fact, I have no tools right now that I feel like I can be precise with. But it works for what I need it for, and it does seem to do the trick. There we go. Let's get that thing up on the wall. Okay, so the next big one that I've got to get up on the wall and get out of the way is Airstrike. Now, this bugger, actually pretty handy, but it is really only brad nails. There's a lot of different settings on it, and occasionally, just occasionally, it'll get bound up at the top here. And that probably just needs to be greased. I haven't chucked some oiler in there for a long time. But it does its trick. It is not the only nailer I have, but it is. When I bought it, I thought it was going to be like a real nailer, and it does a pretty good job, but it's just brad nails, different sizes and stuff. But in fact, I don't know if I even have any nails for this. Actually, you know what? I do. I do have some Metabo nails that fit this. Okay, so let's figure out how to put this up on the wall. So the trick with these is that it's really got a weird profile to it. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it kind of kicks over at an angle here on one side. And then the compressor here in the center is pretty flat. So one side is set up under the premise that you're going to lay it on that side. It's got those 2 rubber tabs. It's going to be laid there. Or potentially that's the side where this bracket for hooking it on your belt is hooked up, but that's going to be rubbing up against your leg. I have used this bracket before. I don't deny it, but it isn't exactly the most fun thing to have banging up against your leg. So I think when I'm looking at this, it's probably not likely that I'm going to stick it on the wall with the heavy side up or with the heavy side like vertical, and rather that I'm going to end up sticking it on the wall with the heavy side hanging down, as it might make more sense to do it that way. So in a sense, this is probably going to be a similar project to the one we just completed with the jigsaw. I kind of wish there was a way to make it so that it wasn't taking up quite so much lateral space on the wall, because realistically, there's only one point of hanging force, and that is right down the middle. I may make a weird shape for this one and make it an angle, which would allow 2 smaller clips to sit side by side on it. That might be a place to say, like, house the screws or the nails rather for it. That's pretty heavy duty. A piece of 3/4 inch particle board. Flooring, perhaps. Yeah, flooring, maybe. How much of this do I actually need to make it stable? This falls out of stability there. So this part right here, this piece of plastic, is what its stability point is. So that needs to be on the board. Board needs to be set like this. And let's do some marks. We can cut into it right to about here. We'll have to measure that, see where that roughs out at. And it doesn't need to be any taller than this. Actually, let's stick a battery on this and see how tall that battery sticks off. I don't usually leave a battery on this, but occasionally it gets stuck, it's left there. like that. If I shift it over, can I still get it all on the board and cut off that? Yeah, I can. Let's do that instead. That way I've got room here to put in like maybe a little pocket space for the box of nails. That's a miter cut there. And I know this edge is square because this is the factory edge. So we'll cut this and then I'll measure off of that to get this cut on the miter as well. And I'll be right back. Okie dokie. It's kind of a color that I didn't anticipate seeing on the wall, but it's what it is. Must have been like the top plate on the stack. Okay, so I cut off the edges on all sides so it would be square all the way around. And let's get this lined up just to see where it needs to be. Just like that, roughly. Yeah. Cool beans. Now, let me see if I can find a piece of wood that is no deeper than 3.5 inches. So 3 inches would be preferable. Okie dokie. Now, with that in mind, what we're going to do is put them in like this. Essentially, because there's enough room to do that here, and because this is so heavy, I think that'll hold a little bit better. Up there, lines up there, lines up at the bottom enough. And we're going to set this in position. This is the one with the weird taper, so I guess I'll put that towards the back. No, towards the front. And we'll put this one in right there. Or maybe down the middle would be better. Just like that. Came with 2 screws, so I'm just going to use those 2 screws that it came with to drive those those screws together, to drive these 2 pieces together. And that should give me that strength I was talking about. Okay. This goes here. And this one goes here, roughly. So I set that up. Put some tension on it so I don't lose position here. Doesn't really matter on the board, I guess, but I need a shorter screwdriver bit. Okay. Help lined it up. Rolling it like that. Let's put the backer board behind this one. Go get 3 screws. This right there, I think. Okay. Make sure that alignment looks right with the. Yep. All right. See if that did the trick. No, wait, that's wrong. That. Kind of precarious, to be honest. I mean, it'll do, but I don't like that it's not as stable as the others. Like, it's a really good chance that if there's vibration, the wall slides that way. How do I correct for that without making it more difficult to put on and take off? It's going to slide down to that point. Don't get me wrong, it works, and it is nice and flat there. There's something about this design I don't like. Maybe it's because it's too... There's not enough. It doesn't feel solid enough, basically. A lot of room back there. This is the size of the box of nails that you can buy, thickness-wise. It's just a little too thick to go in there. Kind of nice to have access to all of the stuff right in one spot. Hopefully this will be something I can get done, and then I'll have done 3 in one video. That'd be fantastic. Okay, so I went ahead and cut the piece of wood down, trimmed it up. It's in nice and snug. Now we get to a moment of truth here. These will need to be sanded, obviously, but here's a piece of that 1/4 inch ply, which I thought I cut the right length, but I guess I did not. So I'll have to cut that down. Right, that. Yep. I'm going to measure this one in and set it in place. Make sure it's all set and leveled out. Leveled out enough, I guess. Just like that. Where it's marked for. Get pulled in. Started pulling out, so I think that I'm gonna have to do that one again, but in the meantime, this should give me enough to get started. I gotta find a screw for that other side. Hang on. Oh wait, hang on. Is that too long? No, that's not too long at all. But it's a T15. I don't have a T15 bit out right now, so let's see what else I have. So my other option here is to screw them in from the front using the normal like 2.5s here. Since the depth here is, I mean, that's right on the money, but I need to put this on the front too. And so if I screw down through the front this way, that should tie the whole thing together. So I think that's what I'm going to do instead. As long as it doesn't stick out on the top, we should be okay. And it didn't puncture, so that's good. Cool, 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 cool. Looks like we're getting there. That is our nailer bracket. See how we did. Not too shabby. That looks all right for what it does. There we go. We get that one on the wall too. Okay, guys. Well, here they are on the wall. There's the nailer that we did, and up there is the buffer that we did, and down here is the jigsaw that we did. And in a previous video, I also did this sander by Metabo. So this is my trial wall, and I'll be putting stuff up here until I have figured out where I'm going to be putting everything. But that is it for now. The video is done. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to follow along with the Barn to Workshop project. And I appreciate the comments. So if you got anything you want to know about what I'm doing, or if you got any suggestions for things moving forward, please let me know. Cheers. I'll see you next time. This stool spins, and it has 5 legs, and I made it out of a piece of wood that came from a tree. All pieces of wood come from trees, John. That sounds stupid. Do it one more time. Okay.